Good morning, everyone. This is Katie Novotny calling in from Premier Marketing. I want to thank you for joining us. And for those of you that are listening to the recording, I appreciate you taking the time to share a little bit, so we can share a little bit about what's going on in the LTC division. First and foremost, happy Long-Term Care Awareness Month. I am thrilled that we have a big lineup. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I have a different carrier going to talk about their product and where we're seeing things shine in the LTC STC arena. So today we have John Gibbons with Mutual of Omaha. He's going to share some sales ideas, some closing tips, and some overall perspective of how to take LTC and really make it part of your portfolio, allowing 2024 to be a year to remember. With that, John, you ready to take it away?
I'm ready. Good morning, everybody. So just a little background. I've been with Mutual of Omaha for about 4 years. Prior to that, One America for 4, and then Genworth for like 17 or so. So been in the industry a long time. So as Katie mentioned, I want to walk through kind of how to lay out a plan, how to plan it, how to have the conversation. What happens is, I found over the years, most agents are not proactive with this, and this is critical in retirement planning. Others may have clients come to them, or they're semi-proactive with this, and you get an illustration from Katie and the team, and all you do is just walk through the illustration, and then the client goes, "That's too expensive," and they blame the carrier. You didn't set the stage like you do for all other products. All right, so I'm going to give you some ammo and hopefully some golden nuggets that will help you do that. And if any of you on here are new, working with Katie and the team at Premier, seasoned veterans, you've got people that know what they're doing here, great organization, you're in great hands with all of this. So let's go ahead and get started with this. So let's talk about risk management. And this is something you could just talk to or draw on a piece of paper. You're talking to a prospect or a client. Mr. and Mrs. Jones, insurance has served you well over the years, and at different stages of your life, you've had different insurance products help you. So, every auto and homeowners, right? It's mandated, but if it wasn't, most prudent people would have it anyways, right? And your umbrella, health insurance, you got to have that, right? Take care of yourself and your family. GI, hopefully, right, to protect your salary. Life insurance, a staple. Well, now the next stage of your life is retirement, and thinking about that retirement, nest egg being protected, and your family protected. Transfer the risk here. It's just the next stage of life. Now, let's talk about the long-term care gap. This is a study done by Edward Jones. The question is, your greatest financial worries in retirement. Now, you've got retirees in the yellow or gold, pre-retirees in the blue, and I bet most people intuitively think it's outliving my savings, right? Like what, number 4? It's healthcare costs, including long-term care in retirement. All right, in retirement. Now, so 52%, 66%. Now let's go see the gap over here. This is a LIMRA study, and in the second bar chart here, long-term care, once again, 55%. Yep, I get it, I need it. Yep, blue is I need it. Orange here, I have it, 15%. There's the big disconnect. All right, and I think part of it is agents are not proactive with this and bring it to their clients, may not have the comfort level to do it. Or 2, when they do it, they don't do it appropriately and lay out a plan that they understand and where it makes sense. So the need is here. Be proactive with your clients, prospects. We do pay commissions. All right. Sometimes you're going to hear people say, I'm going to self-insure. Wrong terminology. You're not insuring anything then. You're self-funding. It's a gamble. You're rolling the dice that it's not going to happen to you. And guess what? Right here, That is an all-in bet. You're betting that you're not going to have to dip into your savings for this, and it's not going to happen to you. And you're exposing your whole portfolio. If it's a $300,000 event, and that's all, you hope that's all it is, that's your money, gone. If it's $1 million event, gone. 2 million, you can't unring that bell. It's too late. You rolled the dice, you lost. And I've heard numerous cases over the years, people telling me their family went to $2 million. 5 million is the most I've heard, and that was probably 15 years ago. I heard 4 million about 2 years ago when I was on a panel. Agent stood up and said, we went to 4 million. This is the reality of it. You're exposing everything. All right. I could tell you quickly, my mother had MS for 40 years in a wheelchair for 20 of it, on and on. All right. Long story short, she eventually ended up in a nursing home on Medicaid. When she passed away about 4 years ago, I did back of the envelope math. She easily been a $2.5 million claim. Easily, today's dollars. All right, if you transfer the risk, this protects the ones you love, spouse, adult children. It's not so much about the one that needs care, it's about the impact to the family, right? You know what, matter of fact, I'm gonna tell a quick story. There's somebody from CLTC that's a speaker that tells a lot of long-term care, and he talks about a story, and I have this in print if you would like it, called Prisoner in My Own Home. So the short story is Mrs. Jones, the husband had dementia. Mrs. Jones would go to the grocery store or try to leave and meet a friend for a cup of coffee to get a break as a caregiver, and her husband would fall. Numerous times to get hurt, cracked his ribs one time, lacerations on his head another time, contacts the agent, says, can you come out and help assess, I know he has this policy, can we use it? It makes the assessment, oh yeah, no brainer, this is a problem. Tells the husband, listen, you have this policy, you can have somebody come into your home and help you. I don't want anybody coming into my home. My wife to take care of me. So he goes through and says, listen, your wife is basically a prisoner in a home. She can't leave the house because you fall and get hurt. She can't go to the grocery store to get to you. She can't take a break and go see a friend for a cup of coffee. You get hurt. There's nothing to do with you. And they stop and they turn and look at her, and she's got tears running down her eyes. He got it. They used the policy, actually went through the policy. And that's the reality. That's how important this is in retirement. All right, if you spend down your assets, will there be enough left for the healthy spouse? If it's me that gets ALS, MS, Parkinson's, dementia, all those have a long tail on it, and men do get them. And what's my wife going to live off of? She's going to go back to work at age 95? And here's a good term to use. If they're getting pushback, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, if you had an event, let's say a year from now, 5 years from now, whatever, what would be the first asset you would liquidate to pay for your care? Not how would you pay for it, what would you do? The term is, what would you liquidate? That will get their attention. Because like Mr. Jones realizes they have money, but the way we think and he thinks is, we got money, we're good. But once you tell him you've got to liquidate something, the light bulb goes off. Oh, wait a minute, he connects the dots. I'm going to have to sell that stock and pay taxes on it, or I'm going to have to tap into my 401k. We're using that for our retirement. All right. The plan blows up. Mrs. Jones goes back to the previous bullet point and go, whoa, wait a minute. We're not liquidating anything. If we liquidate to pay for my care, then what am I going to live off of? So that's you do that. I told it a couple of different agents, and one of them called me back and said, John, I said that to a couple, and Mrs. Jones jumped out of her seat. The husband was a doctor. He goes, we're not liquidating anything. All right, if your money's tied up in real estate, timing's everything, you know that. And then the tax liabilities, right? And I'll show you something about that in a minute. So what happens when there is an event? Because only 15% of the people have transferred the risk and the others just don't want to talk about it or hear about it, haven't taken the time, it's a fire drill. And what happens is stress levels go up, emotional competency goes down, irrational decision making, and then they panic and maybe the daughter or the son has to take part-time work or quit their job for a while to do this. I had a neighbor that had to drive every other weekend for like 3 or 4 years from Chicago to Indianapolis, help take care of mom. That's the reality of it. So here's the thing, you need to have a conversation with prospects and clients, not just jump into an illustration. Long-term care is an emotional sale, not a logical. They'll buy it emotionally, they'll justify it logically. So here's a few questions, but I'll give you some better stuff of my own in a minute. You know, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, where do you want to get your care? Who do you want to provide it? It's typically not family. And how would you pay for your care? All right, but let's take a look at this slide and then the next one. You got to have a plan and to follow through on how you're going to do this. One of the first things I suggest you do is your field underwriting. So before you waste your time talking about the value of a product, understand, make sure they're healthy. All right, prospects, clients. Sometimes you got to ask a lot of different times so they don't miss something. I will tell you, and I've heard for a number of years, the product's expensive and it's hard to get. We only decline 19% of our applicants. That's it, 19%. All right, and we changed our underwriting philosophy like a year and a half ago, or strategy, how we go about it. Our underwriters now can pull up a database on their computer and see medical coding. There's an 85% chance John Gibbons is in there. And with that, we order now 40% less medical records, 40% less phone interviews. So we have policies going out in 7 days to 14 days, like 150% increase. We've turned down, our cycle time is much, much more quickly. This should be a much better experience for you. You should feel this. All right, underwriting. Next, do a needs analysis. Know who you're talking to. Do not do the same design for a middle class as an upper middle class. Affluent, I just do a little bit extra than upper middle class. But, you know, blue collar or teachers with pensions and stuff like that typically can't afford what an upper middle class person would do. And you go, well, that's the coverage they need. That's great. They can't afford it. So you show that they can't buy it, they get nothing. I knock it down. Like for somebody like blue collar, I'll do like $3,500 a month. Just 2 years of coverage, maybe 3, or show both. 2% inflation only. That's, and I will not do shared plan with them because it's expensive. I love shared plan with upper middle class and affluent. All right, so just know your audience. My mother with the MS, if she had a small policy with my father's pension, she wouldn't end up on Medicaid in a nursing home. But didn't have it, she ends up on Medicaid in a nursing home. All right, here's a great question, please write this down. Once I've gone through this, I'm going to start and get into why this is important. Mr. and Mrs. Jones, have you had any experience with being a caregiver? Any experience being a caregiver? Now, if the answer is yes, the follow-up question is, what was the impact to you physically and emotionally? Please write that down. What was the impact to you physically and emotionally? Now, here's what happened. This is the emotional part. So they're going to talk about that. It's a nightmare being a caregiver, right? So then they're going to bring all these bad things up that you're going to be able to use in the close if they push back, and talk to them about, they're going to mention, I don't want my kids to go through this. Now, here's the other piece. If they have not been a caregiver, then you need to impart on them why this is critical for you. All right, why you think this is important. and you have a passion for this. So for me, right, it's easy. My mother with an MS, I would tell that story. All right. The more adamant you are that this is important, the more likely they're going to come along and get the coverage they need. Now, next, I'm going to give you a 3-step sales process. This could be the most important thing I can teach you. You can know the product inside and out, but if you know how to position it, doesn't do you any good. So these 3 steps, if you write them down and you follow this, and I'm going to give you more flavor in a second here, the sale becomes self-evident. I've used this for, I don't do assisted sales anymore, but I've helped in the past when I was with Gemworth. In the first 2-3 years in the business, I was with Gemworth. I covered the money managers, the wirehouses. I did assisted sales for 3 years. I know how this works. So first one, a good setup is Mr. and Mrs. Jones. My most prudent clients work with me on extended care planning, not long-term care, for 3 reasons. And there's your 3 reasons. First one, people are living a longer life. Second one, family issue. Third, if you have an event, how are you going to pay for it? Now, you can take a snap picture of that, screenshot it, whatever. I'm gonna go through it here on individual slides. So first one was people are living a longer life. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, think about the things that were fatal to your parents and grandparents. They're now manageable, right? You get a stroke, or I'm sorry, you have a heart issue. I just saw a neighbor walking down the street. He had a second heart attack. They put in a couple stents. He goes, I feel great, right? Fine. Cancer, we find it sometimes pre-stage 1 now, right? With all the blood tests people get and things like that. And then if you don't, advances in chemo and radiation and stuff. All right. So now, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, you're 90 or 95 and you just need help by aging, bathing, dressing, eating, whatever it is. What's your game plan? How are you going to pay for that? What are you going to do? I don't have a plan. Well, that's why I'm here. For my adult children. Great. You're 95, they're 75. I don't think that's prudent planning. That's the first step. Second step, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, this is a family issue. With all due respect, this has nothing to do with the one that gets ill. And before I do that, down here is a good bullet point, this last one. There's a stat, it's Health and Human Services, says that if you hit age 65, there's a 70% chance you're going to have an extended care event. 70. Now, if the number is wrong, cut it in half. 35% is significant, right? Now, if that's a couple, that equates to a 91% chance right here that one of you two going to have an extended care event. You think you're going to be one of the 9%? All right, family issue. Families are smaller nowadays. Mr. and Mrs. Jones, you mentioned you have 3 children, adult children. If you had an event, and please write this one down. Mr. and Mrs. Jones, if one of you needed care, do you think all 3 of your adult children are going to raise their hand and help the same amount? Mr. and Mrs. Jones, do you think all 3 adult children will help the same amount? Not going to happen, right? And they're going to get that. The light bulb's going to go off. John, you're right. Mary, the oldest one, she's an attorney. She works 60, 70 hours a week. She can't help. Middle one, John's a guy. He lives a little bit further away. He's just not his personality. It's going to follow the youngest one, Susan. So you think Susie's going to have a little problem with John and Mary, justified or not? You better believe it. This tears families apart. And they're going to probably have a story. You probably have a story. All right? They'll get that. Mr. and Mrs. Jones talk about transferring the risk, right? So it doesn't tear your family apart. And the last piece, if you have an event, how are you going to pay for it? high level, you got to let them know. Like 60-some% of people think Medicare pays for this. It does, but for 100 days. That's it. Stops, you're done. Medicaid for the indigent. In most states, bring your assets under $2,000, you can go on Medicaid. Typically, it's a nursing home. That's what happened to my mother. We ran out of money, and then Medicaid facility, nursing home. Next up, well, self-fund is one, and then the last one, let's transfer the risk. Let's talk about that. That takes you right to the illustration. You follow those 3 steps, it's easy. Sale becomes self-evident. I cannot encourage that enough. All right. So what happens when they say yes? It's a big relief. They know their biggest concern in retirement is taken care of. They have an action plan. They know they can stay home, maintain their independence, protect their finances and their family. It's a big relief. It's actually a great time to ask for a referral. All right. Here's a big thing. Only 13%. If you have a policy, only 13% of claims are in a nursing home. 74% at home. This is why you don't have to solve for that $100,000 a year nursing home cost. Right? Most care is at home and it's less expensive. Right? A good thing to do is lay out a plan. I got this from an agent that it's kind of his own agency, and all he does is long-term care. He talks about laying out a plan, and he asks about, do you have durable power of attorney here, health care directives, revocable trust, irrevocable trust, will, whatever. It kind of makes it all-encompassing as part of the long-term care part of the conversation, and uses extensive sheet for pre-underwriting. He goes into it pretty in depth. All right, you don't want to get blindsided. All right, so just think about that when you're setting the stage. Now, cost of waiting, we're almost done here. Cost of waiting, I kind of created this. I'm sure Katie could help with something like this. Your sweet spot's age 65 or so. I'm sorry, 55. So 50 to 64-ish. So you're talking to a 55-year-old, Mr. and Mrs. Jones. If you wait 5 years, it's $1,000 more a year. Average claim is around age 80. So this would have grown at age 55 to 12,000 something. Now it only grows to 10. You lose some leveraging. If you wait 10 years, it's almost $3,000 more a year. You lose your leveraging. So to try and help people from procrastinating, you could draw this on a piece of paper, leveraging and transferring the risk. You have a claim, you can pull out of your IRA money, you got to pay taxes on it. So it's going to cost you $1.40 for every dollar, depending on what tax bracket you're in. If you're going to sell stock, again, maybe $1.30. If you're going to self-fund, it's dollar for dollar. Like I mentioned, if it's $1 million claim, that's your money. Or the other option is we transfer the risk. And with traditional long-term, by far gives you the best leveraging. So now it might be 40 cents on the dollar. Now let's talk about an illustration and review that. All right, quickly, I'm going to go through this, and we're probably just about done. Let's take, this is a nest egg. Let's say these people have $750,000. Now, 2 years ago, we were in a bear market. So in retirement, and I would mention this to clients, you're going to hit 3 to 4 bear markets statistically. So let's just assume, this was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we had that bear market. Usually it's down 30%. This one was only 20%. So let's say I had a 750 nest egg. I lost 20%. I'm now at $60,000, 600,000. I'm pulling my 4% or whatever that magic number is out annually. And here's what happens. And I'm not sleeping well at night because we're in a bear market. And now let's layer on a long-term care event and see how well you sleep. Home care, we're going to assume, is around $62,000 here. If I have to pay taxes on that money, I got to take out over $82,000. Nursing home, 113. I have to pay taxes. I got to pull out 151,000. So let's take a look. I'm down to 600,000. A year later, I need a year of home care, but I'm out of the bear market. I'm being fair here. I grew 10%. I'm down to $517,000. Year 2, I go to a nursing home. I got to pull out $151,000. I got 10% growth. I'm down to 402. Third year care, second year in a nursing home, I'm down to 276. Third year care of a nursing home, fourth year care, I'm down to 138. I pass away, that's what's left for my wife. It would take 18 years of 7% consecutive growth to get back to that 750. So something like this, you may want to talk to a client about and draw this up somehow on the impact of their nest egg. All right. Skipping through all the product stuff, get to my last slide here. Usually this doesn't lend itself to any questions. Forgot to mention to put questions in the question box. I don't know. Let me finish the slide and we'll check again. So last slide. If you have a question, type it into the chat or question. We'll take a look. You just invested, 25, 30 minutes of your time. Call to action here. Be proactive. Look at your book of business, 50 to 65. It's long-term care awareness month. Easy reason to call somebody and talk about this. If I'm 50 to 65 in your book of business, now look for your business owners in that book of business. Mrs. Business Owner, it's long-term care awareness month. Are you aware of the tax favorability of long-term care? No, what are you talking about? We need to set up a meeting. All right, you can write this off as a business and your benefits are still tax-free. If you need more info on that, get with Katie and the team. All right, look at your single females in their 60s and 70s. It's long-term care awareness month. Call them up. I guarantee you they're worried about this. We approve half the people in their 70s get approved or underwriting. So just do your pre-underwriting. And then your wealthy clients will say yes. Some will summarily shut it down. I helped somebody sell somebody with a $40 million net worth 20 some years ago. That one of them just went on claim. Smart business decision. Somebody else sold our policy to somebody with a $50 million net worth a couple of years ago. Wealthy clients will buy it. So be proactive, reactive. My last comment is this. Think about who you're going to see in the next 2 weeks, whether it's prospects or clients. Get with Katie and the team. Let them help you craft illustration that's appropriate for them and proactively bring it up. It's an easy transition. If you're talking to them for life insurance or a DI policy or whatever, hey, it's long-term care awareness month. Have you done anything or any research on long-term care or extended care planning? And start the conversation. With that, Katie, we can see if there's any questions or if you have any follow-up comments.
No, I really appreciate it, John. A couple things I do want to point out. I can't stress enough how much I agree with John in the sense of, I know a lot of you guys are in the Medicare world right now. So all your 65 plus is who you're meeting with. But use that also in the back of your mind as maybe a prequel. You're getting their drug list. You're talking about their health history. And they are bringing up the idea of long-term care. So let's not shut those down, even if we have to, I understand scope of appointments and we need to be definitely compliant. But the other idea is maybe let's look at these as a potential follow-up. If there's something that we can do, please take the information, give us a call. I am going to send out our pre-qualification form as well. So that way you know what questions we need asked. We can customize the product to meet their budgets and their health history. So can't stress that enough. The other thing is that the healthy clients, a lot of you guys work in securities world. You are meeting for RMDs, you're doing year-end planning. The business owners and the wealthy clients are not being offered this by the majority of other people. So be the one to bring it up. So with that, I can't thank you enough, John. I appreciate it very much for each and every one of you. I appreciate you taking the time. We will be doing this again. I'm going to actually send out Thursday's call. We're not going to do that one live, but either way, I'm going to get the information to you. So if you have any questions on that, please feel free to give us a call here. Our number at Premier is 1-800-365-8208, and you can get me directly at extension 226. So with that, John, thank you so very much. I appreciate everybody's time, and you guys have a wonderful day. Thanks,
Thank you,
John.
everybody. Take care.